Well, I'm 59 years old. I discovered I had diabetes in 1991. Prior to that time, I was very active. I hiked, I mountain biked. I was never still, and during that time, my diabetes never showed. There was no raised blood sugars, everything was perfect. But then I injured my back in 1991, no longer able to walk, no longer able to bike, and then, of course, type 2 diabetes set in, but it's hereditary in my family.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a surprise?
No.
Okay.
I'd known from the time I was a small child, my grandmother, Robertson, had diabetes. And, of course, at that time, we were all warned, to watch out for it in our families, and we did, and there are several cropping up now.
And you're born and raised here in
Yes.
Wise County? How many generations does your family have?
7.
7?
Mm-hmm. 7 generations in Wise County.
And do you know,
in Virginia since 1607. So.
Is that right? So you kind of know your family history.
Oh yes, I'm a genealogist. So.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, amateur. But I know my family history, especially medical, back 100 years on both sides.
And what kinds of things do you know that happened in the past?
Oh, let's see. You mean as far as medical?
Yeah, medical.
Diabetes, respiratory problems, asthma, strokes, heart attacks. Nothing of the kind like ALS or MS or any of those. There aren't any of that there.
And what kind of work history did your family have? Do you know about that too?
Oh yes. Now mine is all based in medical. I did 40 years in the medical field. And let's see, my father was a construction engineer. My stepfather was a law enforcement officer for 40 years. My mother was in office work. My grandmother was a sales clerk. I can go on back on both sides.
Is that right? Were they coal miners or railroaders?
We only had one coal miner in the family, and that was my grandfather on my maternal side, and he was killed in a mining accident in 1944, a roof fall.
Oh. So
our family didn't really do coal mining. We were, of course, from the coal mining area, but not involved in the coal mining industry itself.
Well, I always think it's so interesting to be able to know those things about your family.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
And I think everyone should, especially now when you go to the doctor, they all want medical history.
Exactly.
And, I mean, they don't want just your parents. They want to know how far back you can go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, let me find, I think I went off and left my interview, so I'm just going to do it from the top of my head. How about that? I've done this enough, I should be here. Well, actually,
should
here
have
it
it memorized.
Yeah. So my first question to you is, when you hear the word diabetes, what comes to your mind?
That it's a lifetime illness. It's something you have to deal with every day that you live. It affects everything that you do. It's not just an illness, say for instance, that you might have migraine headaches. It's something that affects every portion of your body.
Okay. And then you've had the disease for more than 20 years?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Well, 1991.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
20 years.
20 years.
20 years. And how are you doing?
So far, really well. Now, I don't function well under blood sugars of 90 to 109, somewhere in that range. I'm too weak. I don't have any activity at all. I function better between 140 and, 120 to 140 range. That is where I feel the best. I'm able to maintain myself the best, and it works for me better. I think, pressing, having low blood sugars, it doesn't work for everyone. And so far, my A1Cs are good. I don't have any diabetic neuropathy. I don't have any of the problems so far.
Excellent.
Which they're all impressed that it's gone to 20 years. They said I would have been lucky to have gone 10.
Now, do you know your A1C?
I was supposed to have had that taken last week, but I broke my toe, so it will be 3 weeks. No, I don't know my current one.
Okay.
It usually runs around 4 to 5, somewhere like that.
Oh, that's very excellent.
Yes, it is. It's very good.
So, what are you doing right?
Well, I don't eat any sweets. Of course, that's one of the ways I discovered I had diabetes. Sweets became bitter to me, even though I really loved. I would have my dessert before I'd have my meal to make sure I had room for dessert. But suddenly they became bitter, and I just didn't like the taste of them. I don't eat bread. I don't like bread anymore. I don't have pastas, except very, very seldom. Mostly it's lean meats and salads.
Okay, so, and you like fruits and vegetables?
Oh, yes.
Now, you said that you were pretty active in your
Before,
younger days.
not now.
All right. So how do you get some activity? How do you keep yourself moving and going? And
not able to. I mean, anything. Immediately when I stand now, I have 3 herniated discs, scoliosis, and a severely pinched sciatic nerve. So as soon as I stand up, there's pain. And it just, well, there is no activity now.
So you drove over and were able to walk in.
Oh, yes.
So that's a little bit of a walk.
Right,
Yeah.
but it can't last long. I can't stand, any length of time.
Okay.
Or, a walk longer than this would have started pressing it.
And you can walk around your house
Oh, yes.
and do all your own self-care and things. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Now, did I hear you say that you were in the medical field?
I was in the business offices. I was office manager at a nursing home. I've worked for doctors' offices, not as a nurse or anything of that nature.
But you've still been around folks that had
yes.
illness of different kinds, and was that only till 91? So
no, I worked on it until 2007.
okay, all right. So that's pretty recent then.
Right.
All right. So I'll ask you a little bit about that then. When you were working, were you seeing many people with type 2 diabetes?
Oh yes.
Really?
Oh well, it's really prevalent in this area. So
and
we're all sort of used to it. Some people just ignore it and think it's going to go away, but it won't. The sad thing about it is once you hear it, it will eventually be your death sentence. Because you'll die with either a heart attack or a stroke, probably a stroke first.
Sometimes people don't realize that diabetes can be an underlying cause for those conditions.
No, they don't, but it certainly is.
Did in the places where you worked, did you hear the patients talking about the disease, or
Not much. People just tend to sort of ignore it and think it's going to go away.
yeah? When you're out in the community now, or in the last few years, do you hear people talking about diabetes?
Not unless we all know each other. Most diabetics know each other. So when you go to like your parties amongst diabetics, they have all the food you're supposed to eat. So no, you don't. You seldom hear people discuss it.
Do you hear people talking about cancer?
Oh yes.
Why do you think that they talk about cancer and not about diabetes?
I think it's usually such a quick death. And I think most people think cancer is a death sentence, and generally it is eventually. If it doesn't get you in the first remission, it'll probably get you in the second. And I think it's a quicker, I think. People, tend to forget about diabetes. They tend to put it in the background of their mind because it is such a long-term, long-going problem. And you tend to, sort of put those things, you tend to forget about it, or,
Some people have told me that there might be a stigma associated with the disease. Do you think?
No, not here.
And so people aren't shy about talking,
Oh,
or
no.
embarrassed.
And no, anyone you ask, they're more than willing to talk about it.
Okay.
I had a gentleman who wanted to come today, but he had a doctor's appointment and wasn't able to come, but now he was really anxious to talk about it.
Okay. Are there some support groups or things in the community for folks?
Not really.
Okay, and so how do people learn how to take care of themselves?
Usually from your doctor. Of course, now the doctors don't give you much information. They recommend you take a disease management course, and mine was wonderful.
So have you been through that chronic disease self-management?
I sure have. That was in Kingsport. Now that's the closest we have to drive to Kingsport to go to those. But it was really well prepared. It was excellent. It was a lot of things I didn't think about, and a lot of things. One of the things I was most impressed is she said you can't always get to eat what you want. You can't always live the lifestyle they want you to live, and she was very good. She said, if you want a piece of candy, have it. That's true.
I sometimes talk about the idea of small steps, or making choices. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to eliminate everything, but
No, and right.
Getting those portion sizes right can be a big help, and even if you're still eating a few things that maybe you shouldn't have,
Well, I'll tell you what I sort of used as a guide to not have very large portions. I took a pita pocket, and whatever I could fit in a pita pocket was portion enough.
Oh, what a wonderful tip that is.
If it fit in the pita pocket, it was exactly right. Not too much, not too small. And I still do pita pockets a lot.
And, well, I think part of it is getting that recognition of what a portion size is.
Right.
We go to those buffets where we just load those plates up,
I never did. I never was interested. I've seen people carry those things out that look like a giant serving tray, but I never did.
So when this all happened to you, you were in fairly good physical condition.
Oh yes, I could hike 5 to 10 miles. I could mountain bike the trails, and oh yeah, I was in really good health.
So it's really interesting, you know, that diabetes, we often say, you know, people tend to be overweight and not real active, but you didn't fit that picture at all.
No, my overweight came after I hurt my back.
Yeah.
My size now is attributed to that and not to previous.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's
most people
really...
tend to think if you're overweight, that's why you have back problems. My back problem came after me, you know, after her.
Yeah.
Then I developed, you know, the overweight and all problems associated with that.
Exactly, exactly. In a lot of the communities I'm in, people are saying that they see quite a few children that are overweight or obese. What do you see here in Wise
No
County?
activity. The kids don't get out and play like we used to. I was up in the morning as soon as it was daylight. I had my play clothes on. I was outside and didn't come in until dark. Now all they want to do is Nintendo, Xbox, Wii, and work on their computers.
And so you are seeing then?
Oh yes. I'm seeing kids that are twice the size they used to be here.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Are you hearing anyone say that children are getting type 2 diabetes?
Oh yes. We hear that all the time, you know, talking about kids, you know, and we're saying, well, who's surprised? Look at them.
Yeah, yeah. How about high blood pressure? Sometimes a lot of these young children are getting diabetes.
Yes.
You're hearing that also?
No more the diabetes than the high blood pressure. But
Okay.
it's inactivity.
Mm-hmm.
And they give them everything they want, candy bars, soft drinks, whatever they want, instead of, you know, trying to monitor their diets. It's easier just to give it to them than, you know, go through all the aggravation of telling them no 15 times.
Mm-hmm. How do you think we could change that? You know, I mean, that's kind of where we are right now. We want to get kids back to doing some of the things that you might have done when you were younger.
I think more organized activities for kids, you know, some sort of group or some sort of organization that, you know, you put your kids in like summer camp and, you know, take them out of the house. Now, I was involved at one time in Appalachian Children's Theater when it was quite popular in this area, and we had the kids out doing all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
We had them doing camps, you know, where they camp out in the yard with their parents and things, and, you know, more class activities type things. Because right now there just isn't anything unless your parents are active parents, and most people here aren't.
What happened to the group?
It disbanded, lack of funding,
Okay.
but we had a great time with it. The kids put on plays, and I mean, it was just a really great thing. But there need to be more geared toward activities
Mm-hmm.
than there is just towards, you know, something like music or dance or theater.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Something where they actually
are involved in doing some hiking, you know,
Mhm.
a group of people to take them, you know, on a hike,
Mhm.
take them on an overnight camping trip, you know,
Mhm.
take them out to row canoes, just anything.
Are you hearing anything about, you know, gardens where everybody had a garden at one time, but
Oh
it's
yes.
kind of moved away? Are you hearing anything about people thinking about gardening more or community gardens?
No. No. Unfortunately not.
So there is no community garden,
Oh no. Mm-mm.
and you don't hear any organizations sort of planning that kind of thing.
Most of the activities in this area are sedentary activities. There's nothing really planned involved. Nobody wants to sweat. Nobody wants to do any of that. And gardening's hard work. But I think children would really love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now that was one of the things Appalachian Children's Theater did. They had a garden in the town of Wise. And the kids grew their own things. Of course, somebody came by and stole everything they grew. So that was upsetting to them. But now they had a good time doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, you get kids together, it doesn't matter what they're doing.
No.
They enjoy whatever it is if there's a group.
Right. And it's like I said, I don't think there's enough group activity pressed
Mm-hmm.
in actual physical,
Mm-hmm.
you know, anything physical.
Now, when in the past, not only were children more active, but families were more active together.
I don't know. I see a different trend here. I see parents more actively involved with their children now than they were when I was a child.
Okay.
Because my mother worked, my father worked, my grandmother worked. So they were really actually too busy to get involved in too many activities with children.
And so what do you see the parents involved with now?
I see fathers definitely more involved with their children. If you go by the park below my house, it's all fathers and daughters and sons.
Really?
Right. And during the day, you see the mothers out. You know, they're walking up and down the streets with kids, and I see more family involvement now than I did.
And what park is that?
It's in the city of Norton.
Okay.
It's God, what, 11th Street, and I forget what it is, but you see lots of parents there with their kids.
Do you?
Yeah, you really do here in all the parks. You know, the towns that have them, you see a lot of parents out with their children. But it's younger parents.
Okay.
It's parents from the age of 20s to, say, late 30s, maybe early 40s.
Okay.
But nothing above that. But as I said, my parents,
got a
yeah,
new trend. Do you see junior high kids?
in their cars and at Walmart.
But you don't see them at the park.
Oh, no.
So we're kind of got.
They'd be embarrassed to be at the park.
So we have parents who are maybe more, the younger parents maybe are doing a little different than.
You look at them, they're probably young professionals. If I would pick that idea up passing by, that they would be young professionals, probably doctors, lawyers, involved in things like that. You see a lot of that.
Okay.
But now, a lot of it's economic. A lot of the lower economic classes, they're not really interested in going to the parks and things.
Okay, and what do you see those folks doing?
Not much of anything. You seldom see them out of their houses. So really not much of anything.
And that may be money.
Probably. I'd say a lot of it. But I mean, when they bring them to the park, that's no expense. The park is free. All the playground equipment is free. And so there's lots of free activities in this area that you can do with your families. But I don't really know what I would attribute that to unless it would be economics. But I mean, like an economic level, for instance.
Somebody was telling me over in Kentucky that I was talking to that
our cousins,
your cousins
across the mountains,
that children, not children, but churches often had competitions with one another.
They used to. That's true.
Did they do that here in Virginia too?
Not much.
All right, so you didn't have like volleyball teams or sports teams?
No, which I think is a shame. There used to be, now we're talking maybe 50, 60 years ago, community baseball, community softball. But still there weren't any activities for girls. All the activities were geared toward boys. And I think that's a shame.
Are there any community teams now? I mean, I know there's Little League and those things, but...
other than those, no.
Okay, so it's not just general for... Just kind of have fun. You don't have to be on a team even.
No. No.
Okay. All right. So when you hear about the schools and locally, what kinds of things do you hear that might be putting children at risk for type 2 diabetes or bad health?
Well, see, I don't even have grandchildren.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm not really connected with anyone who has kids in school.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be I know they've stopped physical education programs, which I think is a shame. There's none of that. In high school, we had to take, one at least class every day that was, physical activity. But they don't do any of that now.
Okay. And what about the school lunches? Do you hear anything about it?
No, see, I sure don't.
Okay, so that's not an area that you're really familiar with.
Like I don't have children or I don't have grandchildren, so.
You're involved in some civic organizations, some community. So tell me something about the groups you belong to.
Well, now I belong to the Wise County Historical Society. Of course, we try to push history. We started the Civil War reenactment here in Wise, and that's what we always try to do is push local history. We should be pushing it out here. Do your local history.
Yeah.
We've tried to organize them. We have had in the past groups to go in and clean off old cemeteries and things like that, which is activity, Boy Scouts. But then you ran into the problem of they were worried about problems if the child was injured or something. Who's going to be responsible, and so we had to stop that. That's one of the problems. Now most of the activities you try to involve children in, it's always an insurance risk. How much can we let them do? What if they get hurt? And
we didn't even think about that in the old days.
Oh God, no. I just played. I never thought about getting hurt. And if you did, your parents never said anything.
Yeah, that's right. And then if you got hurt, you just got fixed.
You just got hurt.
You got over it.
You got it fixed, and you were over it, and that was it.
So, in the groups that you belong to, do you ever hear any discussion about risks for type 2 diabetes or living a healthy lifestyle?
No. It's like I said, so many people here have it. It's just, and as we were talking, it's such a long-term thing, you tend to forget about it. Unless somebody asks you, do you have diabetes? And you say yes, and they say, what do you eat? Mostly it's what do you eat? But no, there's not much discussion about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, do you belong to a church group?
No,
Yeah, so you're not active.
I'm non-denominational.
Okay, you're a free thinker.
Yes. Probably Episcopalian. One of my friends, she said it's the church of what's happening now.
I'm kind of interested, one of the things I've been interested in is this history, this idea of tying history into the walking path.
Oh, yes.
Is there anything like that happening here?
No. One woman challenged me once. She said, there's no way. We were having one of the fall fling. I don't know if Deborah ever told you about that. It's a big get-together where everybody has Christ. But she told me we were trying to come up with some activities, and she said, there's nothing really historic here. I said, I can do you a walking history tour just around the courthouse that will take an hour or better. So we did it. It was the most popular thing. We did it all day long. I walked till I couldn't walk anymore. It's back when I could. But you'd be surprised. And I mean, we did, with the Appalachian Children's Theater, a tour of the town cemetery. Took them to different tombstones, told them all about those families. The kids loved it. The parents came and loved it. And one woman told me, she said, if you had told me that you could do a whole town's history out of a cemetery, I would have said you're crazy. But you can.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of small things you can do like that.
Do you already have all of that together? I mean,
oh, yes.
So you already know all of that information
yes.
already. You know, it'd be really interesting to... You say that you had a grant before for this...
Appalachian Children's Theater.
Yeah. It would be really interesting to see if there wouldn't be a possibility of getting that revived in some way.
Well, in Virginia is an odd state. It's developed into 4 locations: the Eastern Shore, the Piedmont, Southwest Virginia, and then far Southwest Virginia.
And
we're
far south.
So we get little of nothing. Everything generally goes to the Eastern Shore, which logically is where the majority of the population is. So that's where you're going to spend the majority of your money.
Yeah.
And here is the smallest population in Virginia. I know they wish they could give us to Kentucky, Tennessee, or West Virginia. I'd be glad to go, but they do very little for this area, very little.
But there may be some opportunities to rethink some of that, or to do some things.
It depends on who you get on the boards of directors for those things. Now, one time we had a gentleman, it was at Clinch Valley College, and we had lots of money sent back this way. But he filled his term, and it was over, and now it's all Eastern Shore, and it's all going that way.
Right.
And that's par for the course.
Now you do have a college here.
We have 2.
And they are?
Clinch Valley College. That's what we all call it, because that's what it was at first. They call it University of Virginia at Wise. And then we have Mountain Empire Community College at Big Stone. Clinch Valley College is not very involved in this area.
Is that right?
No, they're not.
How come?
They are mostly involved with the University of Virginia, which is at Charlottesville. I don't know why. But they're just not really...
They're linked back.
Yeah, they're just not really interested in this area in general.
Okay. So maybe I need to find out a little bit more about what's going on.
You can actually get better cooperation out of Mountain Empire Community College.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah, they're willing to do just about anything with you.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm taking a few
Go
notes here so I can, my memory's about this long.
Oh, well, mine is too.
Well, that's really helpful information. Tell me a little bit about this Civil War reenactment group. Is that actually still going on? Or?
It is, but it's, of course, anything like that is probably a 1 to 2 year thing. And you need to keep rotating things of that nature to show them, our history in the Revolutionary War, our history, early frontier history. There's just so many things, that you can show people.
Right.
And if it's not done, it's lost. And I think children benefit for it. I think it's one of the sad things now that education doesn't cover your county history, your state history, and American history.
Yeah.
I think those should be required subjects.
Who would you say is a mover and shaker in getting things done in this community?
I really couldn't. One name does not crop.
One name doesn't?
No, because it's divided into what you're interested in.
Okay.
And there's not one person really who's interested in everything. We just don't have that.
Who's interested in theater?
That would be Melissa Wharton.
Okay.
She's the one who founded Appalachian Children's Theater, and I mean it was just basically a non-profit thing. It was just most done for the children. But Melissa Wharton was the one interested in theater, dance, and she put on some great programs.
And is she still active in that kind of
Yes.
work now?
Mm-hmm.
So if I found her, I could.
You can usually contact her by going to the Tavern on the Main. Her husband and she own that building, and of course the man leases it from them. But Philip Prince would be able to tell you how to get hold of Melissa.
Okay.
And you can tell her, that I gave her your name. Or
Okay.
her name.
Thank you. We'll take this out of film.
Okay.
That's what the editing is about, taking out
I don't blame you.
They're taking out things that I kind of,
Well, they don't pertain to diabetes.
Yeah, well, they do actually. I sometimes like to talk about what I call edutainment,
Mm-hmm.
and I use that term to mean that the better way to educate is also think about how to entertain, that society is different than it used to be, and so many of the things that are theater actually can be a vehicle for teaching.
Yes, it can. Because the average, I don't know, 15 minutes is as long as anybody can remember anything or pay any attention.
Yeah.
So if you carry anything over 15 minutes, you've lost your audience.
Exactly. And so finding some ways to kind of give a message differently.
Song, dance,
Yeah.
kids on a stage.
Uh-huh. So those are, I think, really important ways.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And so if you want to educate young children, get them involved in something that they're learning actually as they're doing it without saying, okay, now I'm going
Right.
to teach it to you.
Well, these kids had a great time. I mean, they just had a fabulous time. They put on their plays. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and they were just so interested in everything. But if you're going to teach a child about, say, diabetes or something, young is the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they're more interested in everything then.
Do you have any suggestions about things that could happen in this community to get people more active?
The thing here is just lack of interest. I'm sorry to say that about our area, but you can edit this for sure. We used to say if Elvis Presley now appeared at the racetrack in Coburn, nobody would turn out to see him. So there's just a lack of overall interest. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true.
So people, if you hold events, no one shows up? Is that what you're
Very
saying?
small crowds. For an area this size, Kingsport, Tennessee, for instance, had a rubber duck race during one of their little festivals in town. They put 5,000 yellow ducks in a river over there, and they had people lining the banks to see that. You wouldn't turn that out here. It's just an overall lack of interest.
So it's this county?
It's this area.
Uh-huh.
It's not necessarily just this county, it's this area.
Okay, in this area. And why do you think that is? What do you...
I really don't know what I would attribute that to. Everybody's self-interested in themselves. And it's just like they live in their own little insulated worlds, and there's just, nothing else going on anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. How do we change that?
I don't know. I wish someone knew.
I sure would love any ideas you come up with.
It's just a long-term problem here. We've all talked about it. We've come up with different activities, different things people can do, and if you're lucky, 200 or 300 people may show up. Now, they'll show up for the Fall Fling. Of course, it's been in business over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think over 25.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a huge festival. It's held in Wise, and all kinds of little things go on there. People will turn out for that. They'll also turn out for the festival at Mountain Empire Community College, but it's mostly people not from this area. It's people traveling to come in here to it.
Yeah, sometimes we don't appreciate what we have, do we?
That's true, and I'm just as guilty of that as anyone else.
When is the Fall Fling?
It's October. I think it's usually the Fall Fling and Home Craft Days at Mountain Empire are both in October. One's the second week and one's the third. So they're both held in. Most of our activities are October because it's pretty, it's cool.
Yeah.
During the summer, it's just too hot, too humid.
Okay, I'll have to find out. I might try to come over. I was wanting to come in October anyway because I imagine it's just beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful here. October and November are our prettiest months.
Mm-hmm. Do you have parks or you mentioned small parks, but do you have state or national parks that are in this region?
What we call High Knob is Jefferson National Forest. And that's in Norton. I mean, it's the whole mountain range behind Norton, so there's hiking trails galore there. Of course, it's a little dangerous. Everybody grows marijuana now in national parks, so it's a little dangerous to be there unless you're in a large group.
Really?
Oh, yes.
And do you see write-ups about that in local papers?
No, we just all know. There's no point in writing them, just don't go.
So people from someplace else come and go there and...
Well, I would assume there'd be rangers to sort of warn them, stay on recognized trails, don't veer off. And Of course, hunting season's dangerous. And see, there's, I think, what, 3 hunting seasons? Bow hunting, rifle, and then there seems like there's something else. Now, those are dangerous times.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to, when you need to go in the woods and when you don't.
Now, do just the young boys and men hunt, or do the women?
Oh, yes,
hunt?
usually just men.
Women don't go out.
Well, women don't want to kill anything. I couldn't kill Bambi. God, Walt Disney raised me. Are you kidding? I can't even eat it. I think venison's in it. I know.
I hear you. Well, I think I've asked you all of the questions that I have here on my list. Is there anything else that you want to?
Well, Deborah didn't want me to add this, but I can tell you what I attribute to a lot of the increased diabetes in this area is cousins marrying cousins. Because when you have diabetes on one side of your family and you marry somebody who's a distant cousin who has diabetes in their family, and you've doubled up on the chance of your children having diabetes.
Well, that is a sensitive, touchy subject, when you start talking about that.
Well, it is. We always tease each other here. Now, we probably wouldn't like it if anyone else did, but we always tease each other here about one big eye right in the middle of your forehead.
But often these cousins are pretty distant cousins.
In the beginning, they weren't. That's where your problem came in, because we were an isolated area. Yeah. There were very, very few people, very, very few roads to get in here, mostly pathways. And at that time, it was close cousins marrying close cousins. But now it's distant, but still, if you were born and raised here, and your families were born and raised here, anybody you marry is going to be a cousin somewhere. Especially if you marry someone from this area.
I was going to say, unless you marry one of those outsiders.
Oh, yes, let me bring in one of them Yankees.
You'll never get adopted in.
No, it takes years. Then you have to change your whole family history.
And that's one of the things that's one of the interesting things about the Appalachian region. It's true no matter where, it seems like no matter where you go.
Well, it is in the deep South too, if you have actual Southerners. It's true there too.
Yeah. Well, anything else?
No, that's all I can think of, unless we pretty much covered, with me anyway.
Okay, well, I thank you so much. This has been delightful.
This has been a lot of fun. I didn't know if you'd be any fun or not, but you have.